Shut up, compressor. What's up everyone, Matt here with Dukes Models, and welcome to part 3 of the P-40F build. In this installment, we're going to be focused on weathering and installing some final details into the cockpit. And I want to start today with the seat, and particularly with the HGW belts. Now if you look very carefully at the belts, you might see running down the middle of them, there's some stitching detail that is white. Ugh. So I want to pick that out, but picking that out requires something that also won't completely stain into the rest of the belt. Because if you try that, like on the back here, it just looks like you dipped it in shit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some aqua gloss and just grab some on a brush and literally just brush it onto the belts. This will kind of seal the textile nature of these things, so that we can come in and apply washes and not have them stink everything up. Typically, when you're dealing with a seat and these kind of belts and you're doing this sort of operation, it's not a bad idea just to treat the whole seat, but because we're dealing with a metal seat, rules need to be a little bit different. Alright. Now it is time to magic wash the cockpit itself. For this, my recipe is about half water, a few drops of this Derivan Matisse surface tension breaker, aqua gloss, want to be about the other half. Where's my lid? There's my lid. And then some Tamiya rubber black. I like the rubber black because it is not true black. It's more of sort of a dirty black like that. And for this, we're just going to add 1, 2, 3, 4 drops. Might be too much. We'll find out. Okay, and since I've got some old cockpit sidewalls and shit to play with, see how this would come out on these first, right? Okay, yeah, I don't think that's too dark. Excelente. Considering this is a leather seat back, I'm giving it slightly different treatment than I would the rest of the areas. Okay. Okay, so while the magic wash has been drying, I've gone ahead and moved into some other stuff, namely getting the various switches and dials and whatnot placed. So I know that I said I thought the Edward photo etch for the trim wheels was fine, but then I found these on a new Annie's set that I have. They are 1/32 dials and whatnot. And these are trim tab dials, so sweet. Primed them in black, painted the outside with ammo steel, and dropped some little stencils on them. They're now glued in and looking mighty fine. Got another little switch placed right on here for the fuel selector. And that is pretty much good to go, just waiting for glue to dry so we can get into weathering and all that kind of stuff. On this side, it's hard to see because they're all black, but we have a lot of little switches and dials and whatnot installed over on this side. And so again, kind of just waiting for shit to dry up. I'm not sure what we got going on there. That's so deep in the cockpit, nobody will care anyway. Once this dries, it's a matter of getting in here and maybe dry brushing a little bit of the switch gear just to make it pop a little bit more. Of course, oils and whatnot to dingy things up. And the instrument panel remains unchanged. Now, while I'm waiting for all this kind of stuff to sort of do its thing, there's something else that I've been obsessing about a little bit. If you look at the fuselage itself, and this counts as the cockpit, right? The cockpit sills are very plain. And on the real thing, there is basically like a track in here where the canopy runs. And I think recreating the exact track will be an exercise in complete futility. However, I think it's possible to have maybe a slightly wider upper portion here to at least create like a track facsimile. So that's exactly what we're going to do. And to pull that off, zoom out just a little tiny bit. To pull that off, I have taken a little strip of styrene and basically sliced it in half, long ways. And these pieces are essentially just supposed to sit right in here like this. I'm going to glue them down so they have a little tiny overhang, and then come in from the inside and trim them and sand them and everything so they're nice and flush. Basically that. Get some extra thin in here. Okay. So that's in place. Gonna let that sit for a little bit, and we're gonna come in and trim it. I'm gonna knock out the other side, and then we'll swing back around and start playing with the cockpit again. Okay, now that this little bit of evergreen has had time to set up as the new sill piece, we're gonna come in here and remove the excess. The cleanest way I've found to do this is literally with an X-Acto. Get the worst of it off. So that is not quite perfect, but it's much further along, right? Then we've got a length of Infini 400 grit sanding stick. The last little bit. Okay, so there we got it pretty good. Go in here and do a little bit of sanding. Tri-grit stick. Smooth this out. A little bit more extra thin now that we've cut it down. And we'll just let that sit up for a while. There's that good bit. Okay, so the new cockpit sills have been primed up. Everything's pretty much ready to go, and now it is time to spray a bit of silver because they are going to be a little bit worn down. And there we go. Alright, now that we've got the LP11 down, it's time to come in here and set it up for a little bit of chipping. And I'm going to be using the liquid frisket method for this, not hairspray, because when the time comes to seal up the cockpit, tape is going to have to go right here. And tape and hairspray generally have problems getting along. So to do this, all you do is take the liquid frisket, dip in a awesome toothpick, spread some onto some black packing foam. I've got a little dental mixing pad here to essentially get to a dry sponging state. And then we just come in, do a little bit of stab work, just like that. So that'll help us kind of pick the edge out a little and leave some silver behind once the interior green goes on top. See if I have enough on the sponge to do the second side too. Okay, so I'm going to give this a few minutes to dry, and then we'll come back and we will add some interior green, get everything sorted here, and then move back into the interior of the cockpit. Okay, so the interior green has been sprayed. Now let's go ahead and remove the liquid frisket that was sponged on. This is very easy to do. Take a finger, you probably have 10 of them, and just rub that shit off. Just like that. There we've got a nice chipped up cockpit sill. I need the little shaper brush to get in here and remove some of the crud hanging on the inside. Okay, there we go. And then on the other side, we've got some chipping as well. So, ta-da! Excellent. Okay, so now it's time for dry brushing, and for this I'm using a mix of Tamiya XF20, Tamiya XF60, just about 5 drops of this, and a boatload of Tamiya's paint retardant. Otherwise, you would have a bad time trying to dry brush Tamiya. Dry brushing typically isn't something that I'm a huge fan of, but considering all the detail in here, and all the detail that is like the same color as all the other detail, I think it makes some sense. So, start low to just kind of make sure we've got this dialed in right. And then just very gentle. So there we go. Popping out the switches a little bit more. Nice and subtle. Okay, we're going to start with some Mr. Weathering Color sand wash, and that's going on the cockpit floor. So these things were flying in North Africa, so, you know, desert. Sand makes sense. getting nice and dirty. So you gotta compare to the sidewalls, so we need to get a little bit up the sidewalls for sure. The only problem with this guns wash stuff is it flows right up into anything it can. So we gotta stomp that down a little bit. Okay, now on the cockpit floor, on top of the sand wash, we're going to do a little bit of black. Nothing fancy, just a tiny little bit. Next we're going to do a little bit of grayish brown. And then we're going to come back with more sand wash on top of that. Layers are fun. Okay, we don't need to do wheelies here, but we do need to hold you still. Okay, we got that sorted out. Now we're going to add a little bit of grease. Grease is always fun. So just a little bit of spillage going on down there. And I'm going to put a little bit on the port sidewall as well, because we do have various mechanical things happening here. So a little bit here on the throttle linkage. Put a little bit back here on the fuel selector linkage. Maybe a little bit. Kind of around. Now to tackle the headrest. Okay, for the seat, I'm going to be working in 3 different colors. We've got yellow ochre, burnt umber, and sepia. Yippee. I want to work in relatively small dots of oil here. Working that yellow tone just to warm things up a little bit, lighten things up a little bit. So this is one of the things I do to get a sort of nice randomized pattern for the leather surfaces, is come in and just kind of peck at it with some naphtha. It's not going to flow all over the place, but it'll shift the density, create some tide marks, that sort of a thing. And on something like worn leather, you actually want tide marks. If you've ever experienced worn leather, that's pretty much a lot of what it looks like. Keep tapping in some of this red. Burnt umber, sorry. And there we have a leather headrest. Okay, so the cockpit is together. The seat is glued on the bottom down here in these 2 little holes. So they're holding it and everything is nice and happy. But I still need to go about securing it to the rear bulkhead. And that's not going to need much. So I'm going to get a little tiny bit of ultra glue. I think I might need 2. I'll be able to get away with just 1. Nope. We're just going to let that sit for a while until the ultra glue picks up and holds it nice and securely where it needs to go. In the meantime, we've got a gun sight to figure out. So it basically looks like it literally just gets dropped on the fucking floor. God damn it. Okay. Okay, we're back from purgatory. So basically it looks like this thing just literally slides in here like so. Nice and easy. First, it needs a little tiny bit of weathering. So back to the dry brushing. Doesn't need much. Okay, now to install this, use a little bit of Gator Grip Thin Blend. Just similar to Ultra Glue, but it doesn't seem as quite as messy. This is the part where I wish I had 3 hands. Okay, that was tedious. Now to go ahead and mount this. I'm going to use yet another PVA glue. Good old Mod Podge. Okay, so we got it on either side there. Yarg. Okay. There is one cockpit. And so yeah, that brings us to the end of part 3 of the P-40F build. The cockpit is now a wrap. Next up is going to be installing the cockpit into the fuselage and basically getting the fuselage closed up. There are a few things that need to be dealt with first though. I need to install the tail gear strut. I need to deal with repainting the scallop window interior here. I honestly cannot figure out what shade I painted this thing when I started it. I need to probably repaint where the exhausts go. I want to essentially get this painted beforehand so once I install the backing plate, I don't really have to worry about getting in here with a color coat and making all that shit happen. I also need to deal with painting the area around the forward radiator scoop and basically settle on what color I want that interior to be, but also possibly repaint the exterior, because I believe this is Guns Azure Blue, which I don't think I'm going to go with, and I'm not sure which Dark Earth this is. And the interior color, God knows. The good photos that I have are black and white, and they don't tell you shit. So it could be the interior green color, it could be silver, it could be azure. I don't think it's azure, but it could be. It could be gray. Fuck if I know. So I may just pull a what looks coolest card and go with that, but we will see. So anyway, thanks for watching the cockpit build-up and weathering and detailing and all that shit. And stick around, and part 4 will be coming out in the nearish future. Check you later.